welcome to finally. This one's the Meta episode. This one was Meta announced. This was this episode 6. I think this was episode 7, so let's call this, yeah, Meta episode 7. So we're gonna cover this one question right here. The question that I'm being asked: how would I treat my future children now that a lot of people think that I have this type of, well, thinking. All right. So obviously, the values that I would instill in my children, how I would treat them once I get my own house or own apartment, it'll be really interesting. So number one, in the classical cultural parental dynamic, there's usually uh there's usually this power imbalance where the child has little or no say and the parent has the most say in terms of authority, especially with the mother and father. I definitely see this with my own parents. So what I would do is I would absolutely change a lot of things. For the first thing over here, number one, how to treat my own kids. I would not, in this metaphorical sense, my wife is the queen. I am the king. My children will not be servants. I will not be telling them. I'll also absolutely make this clear to my future wife. Now, how we will treat our kids, no, you will not ask them to get you this or that cup at all, or ask to do this favor. Can you, like, hey, daughter, can you get me my computer? No, go get it yourself, girl. Especially for me too, go get my own stuff too by myself. This also this also raises the really big question here: is how am I going to treat them? Number one, I'm going to treat my children very much, not put them on a pedestal, but rather we're gonna treat them as people. We're gonna treat them instead of just people that I put my authority over upon. I'm going to let down some of my own authority. I'm gonna make my wife let down some of her own authority just to give them a say in their own things. All right. So that means when it comes to, I'm going to treat my children like they are knights of their own. Are in this metaphorical sense, she's the queen, I'm the king. They are not servants, rather, they are um they are knights of their own, and those knights will one day become kings and queens of their own family. In this case, how I'm going to treat them is instead of asking them to be doing this or that, I'll teach them maybe similar to, again, in this metaphor, apprenticeship. I'm going to teach them that all these values, what they need to learn about the world, especially critical thinking in this polarized worldview today. And also, a lot of people may clown me saying, Brian, you ain't ever gonna get any children, bro. Like, this thinking ain't gonna get you any. Shush, bro. Shush, 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 shush. Alright? Number one, critical thinking is absolutely lacked in this world. You see, the problem with polarization is that there's too many people that agree on the same viewpoints, and with polarization, there's absolutely no solutions. It's all echo chambers where people's views are reinforced, and that's not good. That's what I need to put in my future children is to think critically, not just believe this blanket statement or that blanket statement, not just believe this or that, but think critically for both sides of a story. Whether a drama comes up on YouTube, whether no matter how resistant people are to getting to nuanced views or getting to futuristic views, uh I also teach my kids to think critically. Do not sway to the polarized opinion of public media. Think critically for yourself, and most importantly, think critically to both sides of the story, no matter how charged it may be, but think, think. And yes, as I said before, there's probably going to be a lot of people that are saying, Brad, you ain't ever gonna get children, bro. You ain't gonna get a wife with that type of thinking. Well, my counter to that is number one, shush, because you're a hater, and number two, those are ad hominem attacks. They do not prove any real substance to the actual thing that I'm speaking about, although I do understand when people are entrenched in their own views on a lot of issues, but critical thinking is undervalued today. Learning to be a mediator, learning to be neutral to both sides of an issue, no matter if it's the most pettiest or the worst issue ever. It's critical thinking is very important, all right? And I'm gonna treat my kids too. They're not gonna be people to, like, say, "Hey, go get me a cup of water, please." No, no, no. I am not gonna treat them like that. Instead, we're gonna make them do chores. We're gonna give them purpose when they do. Oh my god. We're gonna give them purpose in all the things that they do. Whether they start up a YouTube channel at 15, where they start up a YouTube, or where they start up Medium, want to create their own personal brand. I want to put meaning behind that instead of just meaningless. Instead of meaning with no context, such as like get me on water, get me this or that. Of course, how I'm going to apply this is also going to be pretty unique because this is very much against traditionalist views where the parent has authority, child has none. But I want to challenge that. That mindset there needs to absolutely be challenged because that is a barrier that is a barrier that needs to be broken with future generations. Number one, classical case of autonomy versus traditionalism again. Of course, let me make this very clear to extremists on both sides. This is not an excuse. Not an excuse to not an excuse to let my children do terrible things. No, no, no. Of course, I will not use corporal punishment. I will never hit my kids. Alright? But we gotta think critically here. I think very, very critically here on the situation. Using this type of modern view on it is not an excuse to justify bad behavior. No, it's not an excuse to justify this behavior or justify this little thing or that. No, when my children do something wrong, bro, I'm gonna treat them. I'm gonna treat them very gently. I will treat them less harshly than traditionalist parents. Or think of something like that. Right? I think my wife definitely needs to understand that too. She might bring up some old habits too, such as, "Hey, go get me your water," but I'd absolutely need to change that before anything ever happens. Because in this view of a family that I have, my own children will not be treated like servants. Instead we're going to treat them as apprentices that need to learn a lot of stuff about the world before entering it. All right? Of course, even once they subsequently join their own families too, they might have similar values. I'm not sure. That's going like far, far into the future. But ultimately, in this view, my wife is the queen, I am the king, the children are the knights, and those knights will one day become subsequently kings and queens of their own families. I need to bring those values down. I need to change values of my own family in order to adjust, in terms of parenting. I am willing to let go of some of my power as a future king to give my children a proper say, because I do absolutely want to prevent resentment and prevent a lot of things for that matter. Because in this parenting that I have now, especially with my other friends too, they have no say when it comes to things. Even something that they want to counter, like let's say something that their parents said, the parents will just call them disrespectful. All right, when I have my own family, they will not be treated like that. They will be treated as human beings that have their own potential, and they will absolutely have a say in a lot of the things that we do. Especially when we make announcements on things, on this thing or that thing, they will absolutely have a say. All right, of course, not for the extremists out there. Not an excuse to mm, not an excuse to justify bad behavior once again. I see many of you guys have seen, is that the consequence of polarization is absolutely crazy. I want my children not to be caught up in the societal flaws of polarization. They need to be caught up in the form of critical thinking, even if it means for them getting backlash from other people, even if it means a lot of bad things, because ultimately thinking for both sides and making a proper judgment is what matters, not conforming to short-term strong and violent reactions made by society without thinking how is this going to work in the long term. All right, and critical thinking does a good job at it, one if it is done properly. All right, of course, even with my own type of thinking here, how I'm going to apply it will vary, but it does have to be applied properly. There will always be mistakes, 'cause, well, I'm human. I still make mistakes too, but it's got to be applied in a proper manner for that sake. I think my wife definitely. I'm gonna one day teach her some things about that. I'm not sure, but that's definitely something that I'm going to absolutely change because I think it's kind of like a generational problem. I'll make sure to absolutely fix that gap in my own family. I will absolutely make sure to fix that gap between autonomy and traditionalism because number one, I need to allow my kids to have freedoms of their own. I need to allow them to have this. Well, then again, I need to maintain some power for myself too, because ultimately I am the parent. I do dictate in some of the things I do, not everything, on some of the things that they do. But ultimately, it's a careful balance of autonomy versus traditionalism, because we need to absolutely prevent resentment. All right, we need to prevent indirect forms of abuse from happening, and I also need to foster this form of critical thinking. critical thinking, no matter how much backlash, no matter how much hate they get, it's critical thinking is very, very important. All right, it stomps over any sort of conformity, any sort of polarization, and that's what matters.